Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be sharing my Black Hole Stout recipe. This one is perfect as a beer that you save for special occasions due to its strength. Whilst this recipe is fantastically full of flavour as it is also one that can be adapted to incorporate other flavours should you wish to. Adding cocoa nibs or vanilla beans works very well, for example, as well as cold brewed coffee. So do feel free to experiment. If you follow my recipe you will find this stout to be big, bold, silky and packed with coffee, chocolate and dark fruit. This isn't just beer, it's liquid dessert with an alcohol level for celebration or as a treat. With this now said, let's get to it. Let's begin with a look at this recipe's vital statistics. As you can see, the recipe offers an approximate ABV of 16%, making it a beer to sip, savour and be respectful of. The BU-GU ratio shown almost at the bottom shows the relationship between bitterness and alcohol at 0.38, which offers an easy drinking beer without too much in the way of bitterness. The focus here being pure flavour. The recipe can be found in full within the video's description, which is underneath the video window when viewed on a desktop computer. You can also find the link there to the full recipe on Brewhouse, which can be used free of charge with some restrictions. As always, I strongly suggest that you fully convert the recipe before ordering in your ingredients so you're actually brewing the recipe as is intended. I also strongly suggest that you brew this recipe as is the very first time, rather than tweaking it. However, further additions like vanilla pods that I mentioned at the start of this video will be perfectly fine, as long as you know how much to add for your own taste. I have an easy guide to recipe conversion using Brewhouse on my channel as shown on screen now. Within this video, this recipe is being brewed using a Brewzilla 65 Gen 4 brewing system to the volume of 20 litres or 5.28 US liquid gallons. But as part of the conversion process, this can be scaled and shaped to suit your own brewing system and volume requirements. Speaking of volume, you will note from the recipe that I have made a 20 litre batch here of this beer, despite its low alcohol content, meaning the grain bill is pretty large. This is on the basis that I'm using a 65 litre brewing system. However, if you're using a smaller brewing system, it will often not be possible to mash such a beer to this level of volume with all of the malt at the same time due to volume limitations. If this is the case, then I would suggest watching the video now shown on screen after this video, which was created by myself for the Grainfather G30. However, its principles will be the same for other regular sized brewing systems that are say 30 to 35 litres in volume. This will help you calculate the best volume for you and how to go about mashing. Here is the water profile that I recommend for using with this recipe, which is the black malty profile within Brewhouse that works very well. Using the right water profile is very important. After all, beer is mostly water and its balance is vital so that it suits the beer that you are brewing. Naturally, this water profile is just one way to go here. If you have a different profile that you really enjoy with this style of beer, then go with that, but just bear in mind that this recipe was written with this profile in mind and has been tweaked according to the results obtained whilst using this water profile. Brewhouse has extremely good documentation on how to use the software to make the necessary water changes too, which makes the whole process very easy. I suggest that all brewers, irrespective of experience, start treating the water as soon as possible for the very best of end results. You may well be surprised how easy this actually is. Let's now start the brew. At this point I have preheated my mash water to the first mash step's temperature, and then I have added the grain to the brewing system. I am now giving this a careful mix to ensure that every grain is wet. In this case here I have added all of the grain for this 20 litre batch, and as you can see, even with this 65 litre Brewzilla, we are still pretty close to the top of the system's volume. The way the numbers work on this recipe, all of the liquid is within the mash from the very start, so as such there is no sparge, which is usually a great way to pick up all of the sugars after conversion. Here we do not have that luxury, but do not worry, there is a plan. So if you're doing the same as I and mashing this one with one take within a larger brewing system, then be sure to spend plenty of time preparing your mash to ensure a good mix, and you may also wish to give the mash an extra stir or two during the process to obtain the best conversion that you can. As you have seen already, the grain at the top is going to start off being bone dry, but as we mix more and more we will change that with some patience and time. I started this process by using a malt mixer attached to a drill as you saw, but to further finalise this mash preparation due to the sheer amount of malt, I am also spending some extra time with a mash paddle before the start of the mash to break up the grain from a different direction too. Spending some extra minutes here on this one will ensure that you get the very best result from this mash, and as you can see things are shaping up nicely. I then gave it a final working with the mash mixer and drill before calling this one ready. Naturally, if we were doing a reiterated mash here, then we would end up using even more time. So in reality, doing it this way is in the end a time saver with no compromise if you do it right, and of course have a brewing system big enough to support a 20-litre batch or beyond. With the mash now started and the power of the pump adjusted, let's now look at our mash schedule. Some stout recipes, including some of my own from the past, use a higher mash-in temperature than this one to create a larger amount of residual sugars. Within this recipe we can expect a FG of over 1.030, likely at around 1.033, which works very nicely without the need for such a high mash-in temperature. There are always different ways within beer brewing to achieve different end results, and it's always fun to experiment with them for different types of results too. Every imperial stout begins with its grain bill, the foundation of its flavour, texture and soul. Let's now take a closer look at what each of our ingredients in this mash bring to this recipe, as well as two other ingredients that are part of the fermentables too. At 66% of our grain bill we start with Otter, the backbone of traditional British ales, and very fitting for this recipe too. It's a heritage barley malt prized for its rich biscuity character and deep golden extract. Otter gives the beer its sturdy malt base and leaves the fermentables here. That bready sweetness that supports all of the darker, more intense flavours still to come. It's not just the foundation, it's the heart of this stout. If you cannot obtain Otter, then opt for Golden Promise or another type of premium two-row heritage barley. Failing that, then regular two-row barley will also work, commonly known as pale ale malt. However, the end result will not be quite as great, in all honesty. Next at 6% we have flaked oats. These add proteins and beta-glucans that enhance the body and create a silky, almost creamy mouthfeel. They also help with foam retention, that beautiful lasting tan head. In a beer this big, oats make sure it drinks smooth, not sharp or thin. At 5% we have roasted barley, another essential, which is usually where the stout earns its darkness both in colour and flavour. It's unmalted barley roasted to near espresso levels, delivering that great coffee bitterness and a jet black hue. Used carefully, it defines the stout character without overwhelming the palate. To round off that roasted edge, dehusked chocolate malt steps in at 4%. Think of it as the bridge between sweetness and bitterness, offering notes of cocoa, mild coffee and a gentle dryness for balance. It deepens the complexity without the acrid bite you get from harsher dark grains. If you cannot obtain a dehusked chocolate malt, then please add your regular chocolate malt in the last 10 minutes of the mash for the same end result. If at all possible, I recommend using Weyermann's Carafa Special III. I am yet to find anything as good here in Europe. At a further 4% we have a dark crystal malt which layers in caramel sweetness and a touch of burnt sugar. This balances the roasted bitterness and adds colour and body. It is what helps the first sip taste rich and full rather than dry and harsh. If you cannot obtain exactly this 210 EBC or 80 Lovibond crystal malt version, then stress not, just get as close as you can with what is available to you. Then at 2% of our grist we have Special B malt, which is a darker Belgian crystal malt. Raisiny, fig-like with a touch of plum, it deepens the malt complexity, expanding the flavour toward fruitcake and molasses. It's that subtle sweetness that lingers after the sip. This malt is a simply great addition to any stout recipe of this type where extra flavour is desired. Then finally at 1% we have black malt, the darkest malt of them all. Used sparingly, it sharpens the roast profile. It's a finishing touch, a pinch of intensity that amplifies the stout's bold character without turning it ashy or burnt. Together these malts form a layered, complex foundation from bready to bittersweet, from chocolate to char. It's an orchestration of grains that turns a simple malt into a very special imperial stout. Then lastly we have two other fermentables shown here that will be added during the boil stage and the fermentation stages, which I will cover later. These are shown here though so that you can see how they relate in percentage to the grain bill. Moving on to the boil now, and our first job is to clear the head of the beer and then add in our first hop addition. In keeping with the modern boil time of 30 minutes, the first hop addition of Magnum goes in, which are providing the vast majority of the bitterness balance for this recipe. Magnum hops are one of the more popular choices for bittering in both commercial and home brewing, and for good reason. They deliver clean, efficient and predictable bitterness that has a very nice smoothness to it, which is very much in keeping with this recipe's design. The 15-minute hop addition is with East Kent Goldings, which really complement rich malt-driven beers like this one with their soft refined bitterness and earthy, herbal and floral elements, which will only come out as part of the overall flavour and aroma of this beer, rather than being elements that most will be able to pick out as hop contribution. Late in the boil is a good time to add your lactose. It doesn't particularly matter when you do this, but I would say in the last 5 to 10 minutes is ideal. This addition gives an unfermentable sweetness that pushes this recipe's final gravity higher, giving it a more dessert-like body. If you are lactose intolerant, then you should avoid this step, which is a pity, but it will still be a very nice beer by the end even without this. Make sure that you give the lactose a really good stir in. We do not want this to burn on the bottom. In the latter stage of the boil I then prepared my chiller, which in this case is the Red Reaper, Catalan's most recently released counterflow chiller in Australia that is not far from release in the rest of the West at the time of making this video. This is a product that I will be covering soon on the channel, as there are some excellent design choices here that make it extremely effective and durable. The most important part of this preparation is running boiling hot water through the counterflow chiller to sanitize it. This only takes a few minutes and your brewing paddle comes in useful as a support piece whilst doing this. The next area of preparation is to sanitize your clean fermentation vessel. There is no problem in cleaning ahead of a brew, but sanitary steps should always be taken in the late stages of the brew. This is simply because a vessel can stay clean if you close and cover it, but it will not remain sanitary. Most sanitizers take about 2 minutes to become effective, but by the time they dry their effectiveness is gone. For this reason it is best practice to sanitize your fermentation vessel as late as possible before transfer. It was then time for transfer and yeast pitching. This recipe calls for 2 different types of yeast. Firstly, Lauven EC 1118 and secondly Voss Kvik. The Lauven here is a very highly alcohol tolerant yeast that is more than happy at 18% ABV and beyond. I've had it past 20% in my testing in the past, so it'll be more than adequate for this 16% ABV beer. It's also well known as a fast starter and it performs well even in stressful situations. In addition to this, it produces very few esters and fusel alcohols even at higher ABVs, making it ideal for a beer such as this one. The reason we co-pitched Voss Kvik within this beer too is because it will assist with our other yeast in a fast fermentation, making the process easier as well as faster. Kvik yeast in general also has a wonderful effect of making beer taste conditions much faster than any other types of yeast, meaning that this beer will have a much faster turnaround from grain to glass. Voss is also more than happy at high temperatures, and in these conditions it can fully ferment a beer in a matter of days or less. Voss cake is the most popular type of cake available today and is widely commercially sold in most markets because of this. When using these 2 different yeast types in this co-fermentation for this recipe, I suggest sticking to the temperature of 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This will result in a very clean fermentation without any real contribution in flavour or aroma from either yeast. On this basis, if you're able to, then performing a pressure fermentation will give the cleanest results. So as such I encourage pressure fermentation for this one if you can. The end result will still be very good without pressure though. This is how I fermented this film version. During fermentation, once we have seen our specific gravity drop to 1.50, it is then time to prepare and add half of our Demerara sugar. We stage this feeding of sugar to keep our yeast happy and not be overwhelmed. It also prevents overly sweet and hot flavours from rapid sugar fermentation early on, which will spoil this beer. This also allows the flavour from the sugar to cleanly influence the beer's overall flavour. For this process you will need a hot plate, a saucepan and lid, something to stir with, and of course your sugar. I suggest adding the sugar directly to the pan first and then pour some pre-boiled and still very hot water on top. Just the minimum you can to cover the sugar. Then give the sugar a good stirring before then adding it to your hot plate and giving it some heat. You don't need to go very hot here, just hot enough that all of the sugar will dissolve. Just be sure to continuously stir the mix as you do not wish this to burn. Once you are satisfied that all of the sugar is dissolved, set the pan aside and add the lid. Only add this sugar mix to your fermentation vessel once it is cooled nicely. 20 degrees Celsius or 168 degrees Fahrenheit is cool enough or thereabouts. You should then wait another 3 days before performing the same process with the remaining 50% of your sugar. This sugar will boost the ABV without turning the beer into syrup and will also add a very nice yet subtle molasses note. Let's now take a look at the finished beer from this batch, starting with the pour, and I will then take you through my own personal tasting notes. You can see that the pour is very black, and once in the glass the end beer is also very black with a nice tan head. For normal serving, I would not recommend whatsoever that you use a regular beer glass like this one. Ideally you want to use a snifter, tulip or TQ glass, but the channel tradition dictates using one of my own glasses, of course. You also want to have a drinking temperature of between 12 to 16 degrees Celsius or 54 to 61 degrees Fahrenheit for the best experience. Anything colder will hide flavour, and anything much warmer will taste odd. This beer has been under 12 psi of pressure, which is 0.83 bars, and I'm using this pressure for serving too. I should also mention that I'm using the Stout spout for pouring, which gives a nitro-like effect without actually needing nitro, that I really enjoy and recommend. The example of this recipe that you see here is at around the 5-week point from kegging, and due to the methods used for this beer, it actually conditioned rather nicely flavour-wise in that time, but past versions simply continued to improve with more and more flavours, separating and becoming more defined as time has gone on. Let's now go through my tasting notes at week 5 point, starting with aroma. The aroma found here is a complex mix of coffee, caramel and roasted notes mostly, but there is certainly some dark fruit and chocolate in there too. Flavour. On entry, the effect of the head gives this one a nice creamy start that unfolds into many different flavours as you head down the glass. On this journey you will discover in no particular order chocolate, coffee, biscuit, different types of caramel, various dark fruit including raisins, figs and plums that often remind me of fruitcake with a molasses background that pops in and out as you delve further and further into the glass. As this beer conditions, these flavours will separate more and develop further and will become cleaner. Here are some extra notes that I have for this beer that I'd like to share with you. This beer has a silky texture to it that I really love, and time was spent developing this side of the beer, along with a variety of different flavours held within it. The creamy element that you mostly notice at the start of a sip was also a key element to my design process to this beer. These parts work especially well with the complex flavour profile of this beer that I am especially proud of, that needed that silky texture and creamy start to work to their best effect. I was also keen to develop something that would taste very good early on, for those that are impatient, that would continue to improve month by month for some time. My final impression of this beer is that this is a very tweaked imperial stout that is bursting with flavour even early in its life, that will continue to please at a greater intensity as it comes into further age. This beer should be sipped and savoured like a fine cognac. So there you have it. I hope you found this video to be both interesting and informative. Do let me know. I would also really appreciate seeing your tasting notes in the comments section of this video once you have this one brewed and sampled. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!